I just want to take a moment to say happy 80th birthday to my daddy. I love you, Daddy. Thank you for everything you have done. I hope that you are granted as many years as you want. You are still out there kicking ass, taking names and numbers, and being your amazing self. I hope you have a beautiful birthday, and I will see you tomorrow. Love you. Hello, welcome back to our summer series. We're just about ready to wrap the series up, but today we are talking Rome, Italy, and Vatican City. And then sadly, we'll be done with our summer series. I appreciate those of you who have spent your holiday weekend listening. Thank you so very much for that. I hope you're staying cool and hydrated. And today I'm so excited to talk to you about Rome, Italy. I was going to do a whole separate podcast featuring our day at Vatican City, but thinking better of it, I've decided that I will keep it more as a spiritual experience for myself. I'll tell you a few of the highlights here, and then we'll conclude the series. I wouldn't be able to do it justice anyway. It's something I think you really need to experience for yourself. Especially, I was fortunate enough to visit in this year of 2025, which I'll tell you all about as we talk about it. It was probably my favorite 2 days of the entire vacation, hands down. The day that we arrived here started off with us disembarking from the Nautica Oceania cruise line, and we had a wonderful time. We woke up early, had a little bite to eat, and then just waited for our turn to disembark. We met with friends because we were all staying in the same hotel in Rome. And although we didn't realize it, the Civitavecchia port was a little under an hour away from our hotel in Rome. And so the ride was going to be quite extensive and quite pricey by that matter. I think it was around 300 something euro for the six of us. And I don't know if that's pricey to you, but to me, I was a little shocked. I think because we didn't realize it was so far. But that's neither here nor there. You guys, we were in Rome. This is the thing that my dreams are made of. Just being in the Uber, heading to the town where we were going to be staying, I had no idea what was in store for me. So we board the Uber, and the first city that we passed by was Ostiense. And that was after we got off of the highway. And I remember Susan commenting how disappointed she was because when they had last been in Rome, she didn't remember graffiti. There was a ton of graffiti everywhere on the walls in this town. And it was not the same kind of graffiti that is considered art that we saw, say, for example, in Barcelona. It was full-blown graffiti like you would see in some of the hoods, Anyway, we got through Ostiense and then went through a bunch of little towns. And I'll tell you kind of what struck me about each of the towns as we passed by. We were obviously driving, so I didn't get to explore. But I remember in Ripa, I took pictures. And the thing that struck me going through that little town was we started to see Roman structures with mini columns. And that was really kind of exciting to me because I knew we were getting closer to old Rome, which was what I really wanted to see. And then we went through San Angelo, and there the notable thing to me was the Theater of Marcellus. Gorgeous structure, look it up. The Roman Forum was another area that we drove through, and I started to realize that this place was really saturated and there was a lot of culture in a very, very small area. And in the Roman Forum, we had the Temple of Apollo Socianus, and it's now a theater. And then we also had the Forum of Augustus, the forum was actually built by Augustus. So you're starting to understand the richness of the history that you're getting yourself into. And honestly, I'm getting goosebumps. We then drove through the area known as Vittoriano, and there was this gorgeous monument built in the honor of Victor Emmanuel II of Italy. And originally, he was the king of Sardinia in like the 1850s and 60s. And then later, he became the first king of Italy. And he stayed in that capacity until 1878. Then we entered the area known as Trevi. And what was notable to me was the introduction of a bunch of roundabouts. Almost every street or every other street was a series of roundabouts with a bunch of frantic motorcycle Vespas and really small cars, all making a break for it as quickly as they could. And then the small town of Monti, and there were a lot of beautiful museums. We literally just drove through a couple of roundabouts and through the town, but the museums were gorgeous. The Baroque architecture, the infrastructure of the city that remained intact, and it was inundated with people, but still very functional and very effective in the way it moved about. And this is the area where you started to notice that there would be a business like an H&M on the bottom, and then upstairs above that would be a couple of flats or apartments or homes. And so that's how the whole town was basically situated. And we finally arrived at our hotel, the Hotel Quirinale, in the area known as the Castro Pretoria area. And this hotel was gorgeous. It had the door that the roundabout door, and it was so narrow that they actually had to have another door off to the side that the bellman would open so that we could get our suitcases in. And so we all arrived, without event. We were all hungry, but we all went there directly from the ship. So we knew we were going to be too early for check-in. We thought we'd try our hand anyway. And no, they told us it would be a couple of hours. We didn't think it was going to be as long as it turned out to be. So we kind of sat around for a while, but I was enjoying the beauty of the hotel. Old school, gorgeous columns, entering up into a salon that you could just sit in and maybe have a glass of wine or a cup of cappuccino or a lovely espresso. And then beyond that, there were these little areas that you could navigate. One later turned out to be where breakfast was served. And then to the left, there was this gorgeous al fresco area where food was being served. I assume that was their hotel restaurant. And so I did a little bit of exploring and sat around a little longer. The bellman graciously collected all of our bags. And so all that was left to do was wait. The boys ran off to go exchange some dollars into euro. And we had been warned about this, but we quickly learned that depending upon where you went to make the exchange, you could really get ripped off. They went to the place directly across the street from the hotel that had a sign out front talking about Euro exchange. And they came right back because it turned out that they wanted almost 45% in fees. Ridiculous. So the best way, this is kind of a tip, the best way to exchange money in Europe is at a bank. If you go to an ATM and put in your regular ATM card and take out money, it'll give it to you in euros and it'll charge you a small conversion fee, but nothing like the amount that these storefronts are trying to charge. So file that away in your little travel guide worth of tips and tidbits because it's a good one and it'll save you a few bucks or a few euro. LOL. Anyway, we finally decided we were too hungry to wait any longer. So we headed, while the boys were looking for Euro exchange, they saw a cute little restaurant that was scheduled to open in a few minutes. And so we headed there. It was a block away from our hotel. La Cucina Nazionale is where we ended up for what ended up being a wonderful lunch. It was the six of us and we ordered limoncellos, of course, waters all around because by this time you're drinking probably a liter of water or two per person per meal. I mean, you're trying to stay hydrated, but it just tastes so good because it's so hot. And so once we took a look at the menu, we realized that we had made a good decision. Of course, we started off with like a caprese salad or two. And I can remember a couple of things being ordered, but for the most part, there was a calzone that was ordered, I believe. There was a pizza or two. There was some pasta that looked pretty delicious. And we ate, we chatted, we unwound a little, we relaxed, and then we decided that we were going to head back to the room to, get freshened up. And then, hey, we had a whole entire day in Rome, and I wasn't going to blow it because I was tired or because we had commuted. No, 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 no. I was going to take advantage. When I Googled and realized how close I was to such delights as the Trevi Fountain and the Pantheon and the Colosseum, I was going to do everything in my power to be able to get there. So, a little note on the restaurant. As in all of the other places we visited along the way in our travels, there was a $1.50 cover charge per person. I thought it was kind of funny that this one said includes napkins and utensils. Not sure what to make of that, but I just thought it was cause for a chuckle. The limoncello at this place was really good. After a little bit of an adjustment, was a little sour in the beginning, but delicious after that. And I can't say enough about the food in Europe in general, but my gosh, the food in Italy was exceptional. The tomatoes, the buffalo mozzarella cheese, even the basil tasted differently. I don't understand. And everything is served with extra virgin olive oil at the table. So as far as I was concerned, I was in, food heaven, and of course also in historical heaven. So this was going to be a great day for me. We got freshened up, and I was trying to figure out how we were going to get around because I didn't want to spend a ton of money on taxis. We weren't sure what we wanted to do, and I had never been there. Even though our friends had been there, I did not have an understanding of the proximity of one thing to another. So I didn't know how much time we were going to need to spend walking and how much time we were going to need to be driving around and bouncing in and out of Ubers or taxis. So I did a little bit of research, and you guys, I discovered the metro. What a find. We were about a block and a half from the Barberini stop, and the metro is their subway system. It's $7 a day per person for unlimited rides. And it basically goes in a big circle around Rome with exits at the Trevi Fountain and the Pantheon, with exits at the Colosseum, Vatican City, and kind of everything in between. So you could get around completely by using the metro. And that's what we did. It was kind of fun. It felt adventurous. I had never been in a subway at all, so I was a little reluctant, but it was nothing like what I imagined the subways of New York are like. I imagined a subway to be dark and dreary with rats running across, and not so much that. Really steep escalators to get down, 2 sets of them, as a matter of fact. And a little bit of a walk to the platform, but nothing crazy. And here came the train, and we jumped on, and within 5 minutes, we were exiting at the Trevi exit. About a block or two down was the Trevi Fountain, but we decided that we were going to stop and do some limoncello tasting on our way there. And when I tell you that they had 5 different flavors of limoncello that we tasted, they were all really delicious, one better than the next. And we also saw some of the packaging was kind of a cause for a raised eyebrow in a funny way. They sold limoncellos in penis-shaped glass containers. So very phallic-y. And my friend later told me that she looked it up and that they associate a lot of foods in Italy, in Rome, to sensuality. And as such, it's not intended to be nasty or dirty or perverse. It's intended to be full of love and sensuality. And so that's the understanding behind the phallic limoncello. Suffice to say, I didn't bring any of those home as souvenirs for my people because, well, they're Americans. I don't think they would have understood the connotation. But also, who's going to transport glass limoncello and penises? Let's be real. So once we did a tasting and grabbed a couple of really cold waters, we made our way to the Trevi Fountain where there was no shortage of tourists. So it was our first time there. And when you come around the corner and see the expanse of this area and the buzz around it, it kind of just takes over. It draws you in. I found myself walking toward it, not even really realizing what I was doing. And then we discovered that, I guess since our friends had last been there, they have now established a system of viewing the fountain. So there were guards, armed guards, surrounding the fountain that kind of hurried you along if you stayed too long. You were allowed to go toward the fountain, take a few pictures, throw your coins if you wanted to, and then scurry along so the next group could do the same thing. Maybe it had become an issue. I don't know. And honestly, it was a pretty efficient system, so I wasn't mad about it because otherwise the crowds were ridiculous. And I cannot imagine the chaos that would have ensued if left unchecked. So I appreciated it, even though I would have loved to hang around there a little bit longer. We were able to get our pictures. I was able to throw the coins over my left shoulder. I was a happy girl. Another thing checked off of the bucket list, and some more beautiful pictures to share with you guys on Instagram. One of the things that I noticed as soon as we had gotten off of the metro was they had little mini fountains that were working all along the way. And there was this one fountain that a man was bending over to fill his plastic water bottle up directly out of the fountain. And there was a line. So apparently that's something that people, locals, readily do in Rome. And I thought that was pretty cool and interesting. And who knew? So you could get free water, but you have to pay to go to the restroom. Just keep that in mind. Santi Vincenzo e Anastasio a Trevi, a Baroque church in Rome, the capital of Italy, built from 1646 to 1650 to the design of architect Martino Longhi the Younger, and located in close proximity to the Trevi Fountain and the Quirinal Palace, for which it served as the parish church. It is notable as the place where the Precordia and embalmed hearts of 25 popes from Sixtus V to Leo XIII are preserved. This church was gorgeous. Right behind the Trevi Fountain, with just awe-inspiring curves and columns and, oh gosh, just when I think about it, I could get emotional. I truly can. And I'm not being melodramatic. It really is that touching. This place was just gorgeous. So the Trevi Fountain, for those of you who don't know, is located in the Trevi district of Rome, designed by Italian architect Niccolo Salvi and completed by Pietro Bracchi, standing 26.3 meters high and 49.15 meters wide. It is the largest Baroque fountain in the city and one of the most famous fountains in the world. Everybody aspires to go to this fountain and throw a coin over their left shoulder for good luck, fortune, and posterity. And I am humbled and honored and thrilled to say that I was able to do so too. Next stop, the Piazza di Pietra. And before I go on, I just wanted to tell you all of these things are being done by foot. So they're all in relatively close proximity, and there's a little bit of walking, but nothing ridiculous, in my opinion. Now, wear sensible shoes because almost all of the streets are uneven, cobblestone in nature, a lot of pits and valleys, and definitely not made for ADA compliance, as we insist upon here in the States. So, a lot of curbs, a lot of uneven stairs, and it just is what it is. It's an old place, man. What do you expect? But we were in one moment in the Trevi area and a second later in the Piazza de Pietra area. And there we saw the Temple of Hadrian, an ancient Roman structure located on the campus of Martius in Rome, dedicated to the deified emperor of Hadrian by his adoptive son and successor Antoninus Pius in 145 CE. This temple was previously known as the Basilica of Neptune, but has since been properly attributed as the Temple of Hadrian because it was incorrectly identified in the beginning. And then we entered the area of Colonna, and they had cobblestone-lined streets with cafes, apartments above, very, very narrow ways. Only later horse and carriage, we learned, were able to frequent this area. So only foot traffic, and every now and then you'd see a motorcycle. I'm not sure it was allowed, but every now and then you'd see one. And then a few steps down and a couple of souvenirs later, we came upon the fabulous Pantheon, the former Roman temple, and since AD 609, a Catholic church in Rome, built on the site of an earlier temple commissioned by Marcus Vipsanius Agrippa during the reign of Augustus. Then, after the original burnt down, the present building was ordered by the Emperor Hadrian and probably dedicated AD 126. Its date of construction is uncertain because Hadrian chose not to inscribe the new temple, but rather to retain the inscription of Agrippa's older temple. Beautiful, breathtaking. Just standing there in the little area was something special. Like, you could feel the history. Everybody had that same childlike look in their eyes. The photo opportunities were absolutely gorgeous. And even though they were getting ready to close, so we didn't go in, you could still admire its beauty. Will I go back and spend time in this area? You bet your bippy. Will I stay where I stayed? I wouldn't see why not. I'm sure it's much more expensive to stay closer to the Trevi area, and it was literally 2 metro stops away from the Quirinale area. So I think anywhere in this vicinity is a nice place to stay. And if you're looking for a hotel, I would suggest looking at the Trevi Fountain and then kind of panning out. There's a lot of lovely little hotels perched above the area. And I would imagine that some are quite affordable, really quaint, cute little boutique hotels. So take a look. A lot of shopping, a lot of just gorgeous little pizzerias and carnicerias and so many gelaterias. Oh my goodness. When I tell you, between the gelaterias and the patisserias, patisseria, yeah, that's right. Between those two, there was one every 3 doors maybe, and then every 5 doors, somebody offering you, a lovely sangria or a beautiful pasta to come in to their establishment. Well, after the emotion of these two areas, we decided to stop and have a couple of glasses of wine. And I think we picked on yet another caprese salad. Then we went to the Senato della Repubblica, and that's where we had our little rest. And it was really nicely situated. There were two very tall buildings, and you got to sit in between them, so you got to take advantage of the shade. And then we went on to the higher end of town called the Piazza San Lorenzo in Lucina. And there I found my little piece of heaven on earth, also known as the 3-story Louis Vuitton store. I walked in with my friend, exposed her to the splendor and loveliness that is Louis Vuitton. The boys immediately made for the seats because they knew that I was going to wander for a while. And honestly, I didn't have any intention of buying anything. I had already gotten what I wanted in Capri, and I really just wanted to explore in the splendor of this gorgeous store. So you walk into the middle floor, and it was just all things beautiful women's wear. If you went upstairs, it was all things menswear. Pharrell was alive and well up there. And then on the bottom floor was homeware and luggage. I saw the most gorgeous Louis Vuitton plates. If only. I'd probably never eat off of them anyway, so why bother? So my friends and my hubby let me wander and dream for a little while. And then once the moment had passed, we made our way over to the next huge item on my list, the Spanish Steps. The expanse of the Spanish Steps is beautiful, and I just wanted to run up them, and that's what I did. So I'll tell you about that in a second, but first let me tell you a little bit about the Spanish Steps. Built between 1723 and 1726, based on a design by Roman architect Francesco de Sanctis, form a dramatic connection between the slopes of the Pincio, dominated by the Church of the Holy Trinity, and the Piazza di Spagna below. So it is a steep climb, and there was a steep slope between the Piazza di Spagna and then the base of the Piazza de Trinità di Monti. And they couldn't figure out what to do, so they came up with the idea of 135 steps linking the two. Under the patronage of the Bourbon kings of France at the top of the steps and the Spanish embassy to the Holy See in the Palazzo Mondaldecchi at the bottom of the steps. And so I looked at everybody, handed my bags to my hubby, and told them, take pictures. I'm running up the Spanish Steps. And off I went. Okay, a couple of notes. I was wearing Birkenstocks, and they were not conducive. The steps could be pretty slippery. Luckily, I had my footing underneath me pretty well, but I was kind of sort of galloping / running up the stairs, and every now and then it got a little slippery. Another note, they clearly freeform these stairs because there are some that are much taller than others, some that are much more narrow than others, but it all works in this phantasmic, gorgeous site, by which there were a couple of landings where you get to take a little bit of a break, and a ton of people all frequenting the stairs in different, locations, photo ops, etc. I would turn around every so often and wave my hands at the group down below, and then continue my ascent. And I finally reached the top, took a few pictures up there, and then came across a lovely bride and groom who were being photographed and had just gotten married. It was really touching. And I think I took a couple pictures of them too. If I could find them, I'll post those for you. But that felt so great. It felt so accomplished. And I felt like I was living in history, waving my hands to the ant-like looking group below, also known as my husband and my friends, from the top of the Spanish Steps, just outside the Trevi Fountain in the glorious land of Rome, Italy. Somebody pinch me. After that, ran down the stairs, and I was just living my best life. My friend said, we have a surprise. turn around, and I turned around to see a lovely young guy perched atop a horse and carriage. We were going to have a horse and carriage ride through the streets of Rome, Italy. What a treat. What a special surprise. What a fun afternoon. The gentleman told us all kinds of things about our trip. We went through several of the little areas that I have just explained and talked to you about. For example, we passed by the Pantheon again, and we were able to get a lot more information because he had been there for many years, having grown up just outside of the area. His father and his father before him all tended to horses and did the horse and carriage thing through town. So that was what he grew up wanting to do, was to succeed his family in the family business. And this was just one happy young gentleman. So I can't tell you what a fun time we had exploring the Piazza Borghese, the Piazza Navona, the Piazza Colonna, and then concluding back at the Spanish Steps, where by then I had discovered that there was a Lego store, and I thought, wouldn't it be great to bring my grandson, who's really into Legos, a piece of Rome by way of a Lego set? Well, suffice to say, we did not find the Lego store, and so eventually headed back to the metro stop, jumped on board, and my only sadness was that instead of continuing forward toward the Colosseum, we went back to our hotel. It was already 8:30, 8:45. It was still light out, but I was quite certain that by the time we reached the Colosseum, there would be nothing to do. It would be dark, and then we'd have to maneuver the metro at night, not knowing really how to get back to the hotel. I didn't think it was the best decision for a first visit, but you better bet your bippy that when I go back, I will be doing all things metro and spending as much of the day as I can out exploring the vast gorgeousness that is Rome. Back on the metro and ready for a little bit of a break, some relaxation, and maybe a lovely cocktail or a bottle of wine. We went back to the hotel, got freshened up, and all met in the cute little salon. When we got back to the hotel, our other friends that had not joined us for the day were sitting there enjoying a bottle of wine, and they had already dined in the restaurant. So they decided to join us and just continue to drink their bottle of wine. We were famished and wanted to have dinner. Of all of the meals that we had on vacation, I'm sorry, Hotel Quirinal, but I would have to say this was the most disappointing. The service was slow and sluggish. There was a young couple chain smoking cigar right maybe 2 feet away from our table. And again, I'm not a snob when it comes to this stuff, but one of the people in our group, when we got our entree, was kind enough to get up and nicely ask them if they could refrain from smoking while we enjoyed our entree. And the young guy wasn't super nice about it, but they did turn off the cigar, so that was nice. The food, a little disappointing. Our friend ordered a bottle of wine that he was really excited about, and he wasn't very excited about it after we started to taste it, but we drank it nonetheless. And I don't know, maybe it was just the vibe. Maybe it was we were tired. Honestly, I want to give this place the benefit of the doubt, but in my opinion, it was the food and the service. There was a gentleman doing music to like a keyboard / karaoke situation, and that was okay, but it made it a little bit hard to hear one another. And so we kind of, didn't sit and linger as much as we normally would. One of our couple friends left. The rest of us finished the wine, the food, and then parted ways because I was so excited for what the next day laid in store. I remember as a child, my grandmother going to Rome on a tour with her senior group back then, and she went to Vatican City. And I remember thinking, that seems so surreal, so unattainable to me, that I almost looked at her as sort of a saint because she had been there in my, in my innocence and in my youth. I was green and didn't know any better. And so the piety of being able to set foot at Vatican City, are you kidding me? I never thought that that would be something I'd be able to do in my whole entire life. So the notion of having a skip the line tour with a service that was going to be able to explain everything to us, I was beyond excited. And it was also going to be the last day of our vacation. So we had parted ways with our friends. One of our groups of friends were leaving the following day, but later than us. We were leaving quite early the day after Vatican City. And then the other couple were staying for a couple of days longer in Rome and then heading back. So this was essentially our last night together. And we made the best of it, had a lovely evening, and then went back to our hotel room, which until this point, I had not described the hotel. Gorgeous marble inlaid floors with black tiles surrounding, a bathroom larger than my studio, I'm not joking, and a beautifully large appointed room with really cute old-fashioned furniture. There was like a bureau that had an old-fashioned lock, and the safe also had one old-fashioned lock that you had to kind of take along with you with your room key. And from what I understand, ours had a gorgeous shower with a rain bath overhead shower head. From what I understand, other rooms had like a little ante room and a little balcony, but maybe not a shower and instead a bathtub. That's one of the things about the old world charm of these hotels, is that you're not going to get cookie cutter rooms. Everybody's room has a little bit of charm and a little bit of distinctiveness, which makes it really special. So we went back into the room and I found a show to watch to unwind a little until we fell asleep. I mean, it didn't get dark until like 9 or 9:30, so it was kind of hard to unwind before then. But we did find our way into our slumber and awoke the next morning, had the very minimalistic breakfast offered by the hotel. And I don't say that to complain. I'm saying that more to point out the difference between how Europeans eat breakfast and how Americans eat breakfast. For them, it's a little bit of yogurt, maybe some fruit. They had a lot of like cured meat and cheeses and juice and, espresso, cappuccino. We have, potatoes, eggs, bacon, toast, coffee, not them. And so if you were looking for a big breakfast, you weren't going to find it there, but there was enough to at least get you going for the day. And that's all I cared about. There was a lovely espresso coffee maker, where you can make different concoctions. So that made me happy. I leaned into that, had a few pieces of fruit, and we were on our way to the metro exit Vatican City. Our friends had decided to tag along with us, not to the Vatican City tour, but to head back to St. Peter's Basilica because there is free entry there. And they wanted to go back to get another look at the gorgeous Michelangelo's La Pietra. And so we exited the metro, hugged each other, wished each other the best of times, a safe passage back, and parted ways. We headed down the streets of Rome toward the entrance to Vatican City, where we were going to meet our group and be assigned our audio headphones and all of the things we needed in order to be part of this tour that we were participating in. And when we arrived at Vatican City, I was so glad we had chosen this option. From the moment you get into the ante room to kind of collect your headphones and pay for your entry, it is chaos. There were no fewer than 3 or 4 people that came up to our tour guide asking if they could join us because they had already lost their tour guide. So it made a lot of sense why we had received such stringent set of instructions before we embarked on our tour. We were told not to leave the tour. We were told that if we lost our audio headphones, the tour guide might lose her job because that's how strict they were about retrieving those at the Vatican. And we were also told that if we were separated from the tour, we would be on our own for the rest of the day. The tour was to include as many of the many museums surrounding the Vatican that we could encounter, and it depended upon the crowds, what we would be able to see. We were then going to be led into the Sistine Chapel, whereby there would be no photography and our shoulders and knees must be covered. And then there would be a walk over to the St. Peter's Square where we could take photographs of the square. And that would conclude our tour, but then we would be able to enter St. Peter's Basilica and spend as much time as we wanted there and find our way back via the metro. So it was hot. It was uncomfortable. Just so you know, if you ever go, make sure that you bring plenty of water, bring a hat, wear comfortable shoes. There is no coverage, so you are just out there in the sun if it's hot. And they do sell water bottles. There's people walking around in the lines selling water bottles for a couple of bucks a piece. The line moves quickly and you have to go through 2 levels of security, and then you can see the guards that are posted. And it's just very, very interesting to see the pomp and circumstance of it all. So I'm starting to get more and more emotional the closer we're getting to the entrance. And for those of you who do not know, it is a year of the Jubilee. And as a Catholic, this meant a lot to me. The Jubilee at the Vatican is a holy year. It's an ordinary year of grace for the Catholic Church. It only occurs every 25 years, and its purpose is to promote spiritual renewal, forgiveness, and acts of charity. So this time, the Jubilee's theme is Pilgrims of Hope, and the celebration includes the opening of the holy doors of the 4 major basilicas in Rome, allowing pilgrims to pass through for spiritual benefits and indulgences. You guys, how lucky was I to be in Vatican City in the year of the Jubilee? Now, there was no Jubilee in 2000. The Jubilee occurs every 25 years. And historically, it used to be every 33 years to mark the age that Jesus lived, how long Jesus was alive. But it was changed by a pope long ago and was every 25 years. So the door, the holy door at the Basilica, is opened by the Pope. It is otherwise sealed with concrete, and apparently there's a ceremonial hammer and a nail. The Pope goes around and opens the door at each of the 4 basilicas in Rome, St. Peter's being the most sacred, and I got to walk through the holy door. When I tell you, I get emotional just thinking about it. The moment was so precious, and I had no idea the visceral reaction that my body would have. So once inside, I was completely and totally emotional. But aside from that, it was just a feast for my eyes. The beauty of the Basilica is you could be in there all day. First of all, it is huge. There is so much to see. There are little chapels every so often that represent different things. And you are not able to, in most cases, you can take pictures in the Basilica, unlike the Sistine Chapel. And the reason I didn't spend a lot of time talking about the Sistine Chapel is because I don't think I could do it justice. We walked in there. You're not allowed to take pictures. You're not allowed to really speak. It's a sanctuary and a place of quiet. There are a lot of guards standing on the altar, and it is roped off. You're not allowed to go up there, but there are steps leading up to the altar, and I asked and was allowed to kneel and pray. So that's nice. And then you are able to either see the beauty of the frescoes above and all the way around by sitting around the perimeter or by standing in the center. So we spent about 10 to 15 minutes in there, and I did catch some ratchet people taking pictures of my holy sanctuary. I was very offended by that. But what are you going to do? You can't help people from being people. And so back to the Basilica, the very first little sanctuary that I happened upon was a sanctuary of sacraments. And one of my grandsons is currently preparing to complete all of his sacraments. So I took a moment to go in there and say a special prayer for him, and also for the sacrament of marriage in myself and in all of my children who have been married, and who are married, I should say. And I came out and lit a candle for my grandson, and I really was so happy in that moment. We came to the main altar, which is just gorgeous, ornate, golden. The statue, La Pietra. I mean, the entire place, you can just walk around and just be touched all day. And I'm a Catholic, so for me, this hit a very special way. But I don't think you need to be religious or Catholic in order to appreciate the beauty of this basilica. And so after what seemed like minutes, but was really hours, and the fact that my trooper of a husband had walked probably no fewer than 10 miles at this point, we decided that it was time to shop for the souvenirs, which was really important to me. I wanted to make sure that I got all of my boys sanctioned and blessed crucifixes for their homes. And I wanted to get rosaries that were also blessed, obviously not by the Pope, but certainly by some of the priests and bishops and archbishops and all of the things that resided in Vatican City. And so we did a little bit of shopping, and then I made my way over to the Vatican City post office so that I could buy a postcard and mail it home to myself. And I would be able to say that I have a postmark from the smallest country in the world. And as I sit here recording this, I am looking at the postcard of the beautiful La Pietra, which, by the way, just arrived maybe 4 days ago. So snail mail is real, guys. We've been back for a month and a half now. And I just want to tell you that Vatican City and Rome were two of my favorite things I've ever done in my entire life. I cannot wait to go back and see Italy, more of it, all of it. Some of the places we've already seen I want to go back to, and of course I want to uncover more. I had an amazing vacation. Our return the next morning was quite early, but very uneventful, and we had a lovely return flight. We flew from Rome, funiculare, to the Frankfurt, Germany airport, and got through customs relatively unscathed and straight onto our upgraded flight, where we were going to be able to lay flat, be pampered a little bit, and have a lovely rest on our way back to LAX. And that's exactly what happened. When I tell you, I could not believe how amazing the entrance into, coming back through customs at LAX. We didn't even have to encounter a human being. There were these stands where you scanned your passport and there would be a green light that flashed and a red light, I'm assuming, if things didn't go well. My light was green, Ben's light was green. On to pick up our suitcases, and we gathered our way back onto the budget economy tram, which came amazingly quickly. And within 20 minutes, we were back in our car and headed back onto the freeway, which was so wonderful and completely different than any of my other experiences coming through customs at LAX. So thank you, LAX, for shoring up the process there. It is greatly appreciated by your travelers, I am sure, and certainly by me, because at this point you're tired, you're jet lagged, you just want to get back home. So I just wanted to get back to Maya, who by then had been without her humans for 3 weeks, and I'm sure was wondering if we were ever going to come back for her. And luckily we made it back in time before the kennel closed that day. So I'd been reunited with our precious Maya, and at long last, I would be sleeping in my very own bed that night. When I say this was the vacation of a lifetime, if you have ever pondered saving $50 a paycheck or $100 a paycheck, or putting just a little bit of money aside to eventually have a beautiful vacation that you've always dreamed of, please do so. Don't hesitate. Traveling is something that is unmatched, in my opinion, by any drug or any rush that you would get from anything else that you might want to do. And it may not be for everyone, but it certainly is for me. I cannot wait to be able to bring you another series featuring our next extravagant excursion and endeavor into this beautiful world that has so much to offer. I'll be heading to Mexico for a weekend trip really soon, and I'll tell you all about that. But this concludes our summer series and thereby our extravagant, lovely, and unforgettable European cruise and vacation. I hope you've enjoyed listening as much as I have enjoyed reliving and bringing all of our adventures to you. We made wonderful friends. We saw gorgeous, beautiful, amazing places. And I have memories that are unmatched that will stay with me for the rest of my life. I hope you're enjoying your Labor Day weekend. I hope you have a wonderful Monday, Labor Day. If you're working, thank you for keeping our country running. If you are among the many who have a long weekend, I hope you are enjoying it. Hug your family, stay hydrated, and make sure that you tell a friend about my podcast. And I will be back to talk all things pop culture, reality TV, food and travel. Until next time, when I will still be here living on the verge.